as well.
Yeah,
There we
I
go.
think it's booting up. I see some logo. Oh yeah, I can see it now.
So
Okay.
I'll show you the track. It is
Roger.
this one. Uh, where's the track map? Here we go.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Let's do this
Uh,
version. Yeah, I've never ever been here for sure. So this will be brand new
oh,
for both
cool.
of us.
Yeah,
I'm
let me.
sorry if it means you have to buy it.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. Let me just add it to cart. Yeah. Okay.
And I thought maybe we could go Formula 4, and there's a reason for this. Because
Huh.
if we do Formula Ford, then we'll be working a lot on, we'll be limited a lot by the movement of the car and, car control when the rear tries to break away under braking. And I wanted to focus more on the actual braking point and how to judge that
Yeah.
rather than the braking point and also controlling the car when it's unstable at the end of a in a braking zone. This car is obviously
That's
pretty stable under braking, so it means it's
yes.
just about the point that we brake.
That sounds good. That sounds good. I don't know whether you saw my latest message or not. I know the
I saw one when I looked this morning, so I think it's your latest one.
yeah,
Let me
that
check.
is the latest. Yeah. So like what you mentioned, that makes sense. The last session we already talked about more about spin, and then in future I think we're gonna spend more time talking about car control as well.
Yeah,
But judging the sense of speed, not that I want to feel like you mentioned the vibration, the sense of speed. It's more like I want to know how fast a car is going so I know where to brake without using reference point.
yeah,
And
yeah,
especially in a dynamic situation. So, most of the time that I spin or other stuff, but sometimes, let's say I make a corner really well.
yeah,
So I come to the next corner much faster than I normally do, right? So like, or track condition get better. So like how can I get that sense to know where to brake? It is I think the challenge. And a
yeah,
lot of time, yeah, when I come into a brand new track, a brand new car, first several corner I just gone way off.
yeah.
Like yeah, that's part of the challenge.
I have some ideas. You can tell me if we already spoke about some of these last time. So when we're in the session, I think we did overlap and cover some of these, but we'll just recap.
Sure, sure.
Talking about exactly where we're looking at the apex, and like kind of feeling whether or not we're
Yeah.
on a trajectory that's going to make it to that apex. And there's a little bit of there's quite a lot of subjectivity in this, but anyway, we'll talk through it all.
Yeah, we'll
And
talk through.
since
Yeah,
I will be learning this with you, I'm going to go out and drive with you in this first run. I'm going to
sounds
be
good.
I'll try to be conscious of exactly how I am doing it myself, rather than just driving it and then telling you where we should be braking or what I'm using now as a reference point. I'll
Right.
give you the full like learning experience from my view as well. I'm just installing
Sounds
the
good.
track at the moment.
Yeah, let me,
Here we go.
yeah, I already got the track, so let me join you. I need to update the track. Yeah, last time when
Right, mine is now installed.
yeah, like
Here
I'm
we go.
almost done finished downloading. Last time that with the session, we mostly focus on spin. We didn't cover that much. I remember you mentioned that there's a few things that you want to cover to get the sense of speed,
Yeah,
not only on driving part, but also maybe some physical setup.
yeah,
If I understand correctly. Um, we can go over all of them. Yeah, I finished downloading. Let me join the session.
Right, I'm in. So,
Yeah,
I guess for
I'm
this
loading.
first run, we might as well just. I don't want to tell you anything. I mean, I can't tell you anything at the moment because I don't actually know the track. So, I think we should both just go out and do maybe 10 minutes of learning, and then we can look back at what we each did and how, we can go on board with you and we can see what it was. You can talk me through how you were figuring out where to brake for each of the corners, and I'll tell you what I was doing. And then maybe we can go from there.
Sure, that sounds good. Yeah.
Right, let's do this. I'll tell you what, I'll
Yeah.
turn on my dashboard camera so you can actually see my steering wheel while you watch this video back. Sometimes it takes a moment to get it to work.
Yeah. The recording is started, right?
Yes, recording is on.
Okay, cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just fixing my dashboard camera. It's so annoying, it sometimes just won't turn on. It's just OBS things. Right, here we go.
Oh, yeah, I can see now.
Just so you can see what I'm doing with the inputs when I'm driving. Alright, that's pretty straight there. Yep. Slightly over. Right, cool. Here we go then. I'm going to learn this track.
Get started.
Let's go do it. I have absolutely no idea where the track goes.
Me neither. Yeah.
It's a cool track.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. Well, I did not know there was a corner there. I made it around most of the lap without going off. Wow, this straight is enormous.
It's a cool track.
I went completely straight on, Jing. At the end of the long straight, there's a hairpin, just so you know. That was funny. Okay, I'll remember that for next time. I'm going to blame the sun. The sun was in my eyes, I couldn't see. I'm going to do maybe 2 more laps, but you can keep going until you're comfortable.
Sounds good. I think 2 more laps sounds good to me as well. I spin.
Cool.
I run up a few times, so I do or have some data point.
Ah, I'm an idiot. Got a bit too greedy. Apologies for the extra gravel I've brought onto the track, Jing.
Like when I do practice myself, I basically just drive through gravels all the time because don't train out by myself.
Right, I'm about to start my last lap.
Let me finish this lap.
Yep.
We can take a look. Be louder.
Okay, cool. Right. So first of all, just jump out of the cockpit just so your engine's not running, Jing.
I think I did. I think
Oh, okay. It might just be that it sounds like it's running to me. Okay, so first off, tell me what that just felt like and how you were going through figuring out. I mean, I guess not all the rest of like lines and that kind of thing, but just where you could brake, like how late you could brake. How were you figuring it out there live with no previous experience of this track?
so. What I was doing is I do I look at I look at the where the I think the apex is.
Yeah,
I look at where I think the apex. Some of them is harder. Like maybe later we can take a look at all the time I run off the track. Some of them,
yeah,
like for example, in the end of the long straight, that is harder because I can't see it very well. I think it's the angle and the lighting.
yep. I agree.
But
I had the same thing.
yeah, but there's some other one that is not that long of a straight. To me, somehow it's always easier when there are a few corners that is connected. So in a way, helped me to get a sense of speed.
Okay.
When there is a portion of the time that I drive straight on for a while, I look at the corner, I know where the corner is, but I don't have a sense really how fast I'm driving. Like I know that when I'm driving really slow, that's different, right? But so there are a few times during my run, I run off track as well. And I guess in a way that I also don't know, I need to remember how deep that corner is or how much their corner is. Is a 90-degree corner? Is there a hairpin that is different? Yeah, so those one is to remember the track. I try to drive really slowly in the first few laps to remember the track. The other one is
Yeah.
look at the tip of the corner, the apex of the corner.
So yeah, so we're dealing with two separate things in this session, really, aren't we? We're dealing with we're using the fact that neither of us know the track to try and tease out how or why we should figure out where the
Exactly.
breaking point for a particular corner is. But at the same
Exactly.
time, we can't help the fact that we're also learning what comes next, what the shape of the
Right.
corners are, all that kind of thing. The two things do go hand in hand a little bit, but when you know a track, like if we were at Silverstone or whatever, you're certainly not. You don't have any of that component of learning how long the corners are, what's coming next, and that kind of thing. So they are still separate things. It's just
Right.
interesting because we're doing the same. We're doing two different things at the same
Yeah.
time that are related when you're learning the track because you need to build in a bit of extra caution when you don't know exactly what shape the next corner is. You can't be as brave on the brakes as you would be when you
Yeah.
know what the shape of the corner is. But once you start getting a feel for what's coming next, and I imagine by the end of that run you had a bit of an idea what was next. Certainly,
Yeah.
if we skip to the end of the long straight, you knew exactly what corner was coming up at the end of that long straight, same as I did. Because even if we had no idea where we were on the rest of the track, by the time we got to that huge straight here that we're looking at now, obviously we both knew, okay, there's a really tight hairpin at the end of this. And so this was
Yep.
all about, for both of us, figuring out where to brake for this one and how hard and that kind of thing. But I started off, as you will have seen, well, you might not have seen mine, I started off by just missing the corner. So on my first run, purely because I couldn't really see what was coming next, you've got like this bright yellowy light. I couldn't actually see we were nearly at the corner and I just braked too late. In real life, I don't think we'd be doing that because I think you just have more clarity of vision. You'd just be able to see into the distance. But that certainly says that the first thing is we should be looking as far ahead as possible. And I obviously failed to do that on my lap. This is your final lap. So at this point, you definitely knew that there was a tight left-hander coming up next. So this was
Yep.
all about figuring out where to press the brakes.
Yep.
Now, one thing I noticed was you started to just edge away from the outside as you braked here, or as you began to arrive at the braking zone. So I was watching your onboard at this point because I'd finished my run, and I noticed as we approached the corner, we see you started to just kind of get further from the edge there, and as we go into the braking zone, we get further out, and you know you're not at the turning point, and then you make your turn. This isn't about the figuring out where to brake. It's just a little extra thing I noticed.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
just sorry, go
I
on,
need to
Jay.
be aware. Yeah, I need to be aware
Yeah,
of that. I do think that maybe subconsciously, I think that's going to help me to see where the APAC is in this case. But
yeah.
I should be on the, yeah.
I think people often, I think I see this quite a lot, where people aren't that confident with exactly how fast they can go into a corner, and they almost try and do some of the corner before they
I
get to the
see.
corner. But
I'm making
obviously,
the
in
same thing.
reality, it makes it worse. In reality, it's actually
Yeah,
making the corner harder. But it's almost like a subconscious. You see it on the road when people have accidents on the road, when they arrive on a corner too fast. They start to turn in early, and then they get to the corner, and obviously they definitely go straight on into a wall or a tree or whatever. But
right.
they would have had a better chance if they hadn't started turning early. But everyone does it anyway. That's unrelated. What I want to figure out is what you were using to choose where to brake, because you can't really see an apex here. I certainly can't. I can't see anything. All I can
Yep.
see is like shiny asphalt here. So before I tell you what I'm doing, like now you can see an apex, but it's too
Yeah.
late to have chosen a braking point, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things at play here. I think we use different techniques depending on whether or not you can actually see the corner, and
Mhm.
also different techniques based on what kind of part of the track was approaching that corner. So this is or very specific. Massive, massive straight. So we know we're going really, really fast. We know it's going to have to be a hard braking point. We know there's not that many reference points or much going past us to give us a feel of speed. And as you know, like the feel of speed kind of melts away a bit when you're going really, really fast and the barriers are quite far and there's nothing on our left.
Yep.
So it's hard to feel the speed and we can't see an apex rushing towards us. We're not focused on an apex at 400 meters in advance and seeing that target is getting closer, 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 closer at a certain rate. Right now, all we can see is like flat track in front of us. So I'll tell you what I did here, because this was
Yeah.
one corner where I did this, which I didn't do at any other corners. I started to use the marker boards. I actually was looking for some kind of guide as to how far I was from the corner, because I couldn't see how far I was from the corner just looking straight in front. So I started looking at these boards here, 200, 150, and normally from a very high speed, in a race car, as a general rule, 100 meters is pretty damn late to brake. So I was like, it's probably just before or at the 100-meter board. That's what I was using for my marker.
Yeah.
Now I told you before I don't normally use markers, so there was a very
Yeah.
specific reason for this, and it was the lack of visibility of an apex. I couldn't
Yeah.
see that, so I had to choose a different thing. And then obviously as you get closer, now I can see an apex, and now I can modulate just how hard I'm braking on that approach just there. What were you doing? Were you just braking early and just kind of giving yourself some time, or were you doing a similar thing?
Yeah, I think that the way you break down this is exactly what I'm thinking, right? Like we are doing two things here. We are learning a new track and getting a sense where to break, which is slightly different two things, but they
Yeah,
share commonalities. And
yeah,
like you mentioned, those two type of corners in this case. One of them is I can't really see the APAC. For this
yeah.
one,
Nothing
um,
here at all, is there? You can't
nothing.
see it
Yeah,
at all.
what I was doing is like because I want the whole point is I want to learn to now to use visual reference point, especially reference point change since my car speed changed. So what
Yeah,
I was doing here is I try to get a sense of speed, and I was looking at those curves basically.
yeah,
So I
okay.
know the curves means that the some part of the track is coming up. I sort of timing myself is like, hey, when I see the outside curve for a second or two, I know, or maybe less than a second, I know the corner is coming up, basically.
Yeah, there. And so that's still a reference point, but that's quite an
True.
intelligent reference point. That's a good way of looking at it because you're right. If there's a curb on the right here, we're probably nearly at the corner because they put a curb
Yeah.
there because people open this part up. That's a really good way of looking at it. So both of us were using some kind of visual marker here. But I know you were saying you don't want to be doing that. I think in this instance, it's probably the right thing to do because of
Right.
what we just discussed, because you
Because we
can't
can't
see.
see that. Right. Which is
So you,
which is
it,
one category. Yes.
Yes, exactly. So already in this session, I've just discovered a thing that I've never really thought about before. I've never really thought about there being, various corner types that will affect how you choose your braking point. But obviously, being able to see where you're going is a major factor in being able to
Yeah.
accurately judge your braking and how hard and all the rest of it. So anyway, that's that corner. Let's skip back a bit. Let's just go back further on. Now, I appreciate some of these other corners. We were both still kind of figuring out exactly what the shape was. But turn one here, this is me on board, obviously. This is
This we
one
can
where
see.
we can
This we
kind of
can
see, can't we? Yeah, you can see there's a curve there. Even if we can't tell the exact specific apex, exactly where it is, we know it's roughly a 90-ish degree left, I think, by this point. It's not a particularly difficult corner. It feels like 90 degree to me. We'll look on them. We'll go above in a minute and check for sure. And you know that in a 90-degree corner, typically the apex is bang in the middle. It's like right in the middle. Unless there's some other reason, like there's some weird part of the track that follows it in a weird shape. Generally, apex is somewhere in the middle. And you can kind of tell where that is. It's going to be roughly there. So this one, I definitely am focused on that. So my eyes, as we approach this, I'm looking over here and braking with a view to getting the car slow enough to make that. Now, obviously, I've slightly missed it on this lap, so it's not a great example because I actually didn't make the apex. But you can see what we're trying to do is stay as wide as possible for as long as possible. So I'm using my peripheral vision to look at the curb, see how fast the red and yellow stripes are coming past, any other objects that feel like they're coming past. And at the same time, my actual focus is over here. I'm still seeing this bit, but I'm looking over here, and then I'm bleeding off the brakes when it feels like, I obviously didn't get it perfectly right here, but when it feels like the apex is still coming towards me at a realistic rate. Now, this is where I say it's quite subjective, because I can't put a number on that. I can't give you an exact way of judging that, other than it seems to me like, obviously I haven't just tickled the brake. I know I'm going quite quickly. I'm in a fast car. I'm going to have to brake quite hard. So already I've got some background information. I'm not jumping into this blind. I know that in a race car, I'm going to have to brake quite hard.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on, Jing.
Yeah, let me ask a question. This is exactly the crux of what I want to ask is,
Yeah.
I think there's two separate parts. One is once I start braking, I can look at the apex, I can sense how much I slow down so I can modulate. I'm definitely not good at it, but I can do it. But where to brake in the beginning, like where to start braking, that is a part that, because a lot of time what happened is that I start braking way too late, even though I can somehow control to make sure that I'm on the edge of the grip, I still go way off. So the starting point, and also for this corner, I'm breaking out into even more categories. I think for the corners that we can see apex, there is still a difference of two types of corners. One is this type. This time means that I have been running on a long enough straight for a while. So, for example, even I fucked up the previous corner, for example, the straight is long enough that the speed every time I get into the corner is approximately the same.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
And some of the corner, there is a straight in front of it, but it's not long enough. So every time I go into that corner, it's really subject to how well I was doing the previous one. Those are the one that is most challenging to know where to start braking in the initial first phase.
Yeah. Okay. So I think one way to put this is you shouldn't expect too much from yourself in terms of you shouldn't expect to have some magic knowledge of, when you're on an early lap of a new track, for example, exactly where to brake. So don't put too much pressure on yourself to be perfect and be as late as possible straight away. I think there's definitely something to be said for building in some reasonable margin on your first lap. I'm just going to go back to my very, very first lap. I just came out of the pits on this track. Had no idea which corner came next. But by looking far enough ahead and figuring out, well, half guessing, but also trying to take in the information that was around me. I'm just going to turn the volume off so I can still talk to you. At this point, I had no idea what was coming next, but I knew that if I braked relatively kind of conservatively, I'd probably have enough grip to make through the next corner, but I certainly wasn't trying to brake at the limit. At none of these corners here was I trying to go as late as I could. Like, I'm just looking round this corner and trying to figure out, okay, how far is it to the next one? It's out of sight. It looks tight. There's a big red sausage curve. It's probably tight, probably medium-ish braking, but I'm going to go early enough that I'm not risking going off. This one, I didn't know which way the track went. You see, I swerved to the left at the last minute because I didn't know it was a right-hander. But once you're in this one, we could kind of see it's a tight right, tight left. This one, I'm like, well, the black lines look like they go over to an inside apex, but I've got no idea where it's going next. Looks like it's going off to the left here. It's blind. I don't know. So I'm just not going to brake where I feel the limit is. I'm going to go early.
That makes sense. And what happened to me is even for some of the track I do know, like you mentioned in the beginning, right? There are two slightly different situations. This is a new track, and even for some of the track I do know, I have this challenge that for some of the corner, which is in a medium straight, basically. So, like I mentioned earlier, that I can, mess up enough from the previous corner or do really well. There is substantial difference of speed.
Yep.
And that's basically come down to why I don't want to use reference point. Like
Okay.
there's a marker board is like, 50 meter, but it's not the same situation every time I get to the 50 meter or 100 meter board because how fast I was going.
So this might sound too obvious, Jing, so I'm sorry if this sounds super obvious. But say it's a track you already know. Let's just pull one out of thin air. So it's like Hockenheim or something. And you have messed up a corner, but you know the track, but you know you've come out of the previous corner slower than normal. In simple terms, the way I approach the next corner is, I know I'm travelling a little bit slower than normal, so I know I can brake a little bit later, but there's no specific, I'm not going, right, I'm going 10 miles an hour slower so I can brake 15 metres later or anything like that. It's not as specific as that, but it's just, I'll go a little bit later. Like, past where if you know the track and you've done a few laps, you know roughly where you would normally brake. I don't mean necessarily a reference point, but you've got a feel of how close to the corner you can generally get away with braking. Yeah. And so I just go, when I get to that point where my driving brain is like, now, I go just past that a little bit. That's basically how sorry, I'm just... looks like someone's just arrived at my house, and I was just checking because I could hear a noise outside. It might be the robot vacuum cleaner bashing on the door. Anyway, so I know that's a bit vague, and I hate being vague like that. I want to give you like a real specific answer. It was the robot vacuum cleaner. But yes, basically, if I've got a really good exit, I know, I'm probably going to have to brake slightly earlier than normal, but only a little bit because it was only a slightly better exit. But if I've had a spin and then recovered, well, I know I can brake way later than I could on a normal lap because I'm going significantly slower. So it's kind of, you do have to remember what's just happened. You also have to remember how it felt in the braking zone in the previous corner. Was I locking up easily? Are my tyres destroyed or overheating? Or, so you're taking into account lots of context. I mean, ideally, you're doing it subconsciously. Ideally, you're just aware of these things and naturally building in extra margin. I don't know, you've been through some gravel, so you've got gravel on your tyres, so you brake 2 or 3 metres earlier. But none of those things you have to focus on too much if you're just aware of them.
Right. That definitely makes sense. That's what like I try to do as well. If I know, hey, I did a really good corner, right, and the very next one, I want to be very careful. And part of the reason that we started this conversation and we talk about this, the part 2 of our conversation is, I recently go to a brand new go-kart track.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey,
what track? Out of interest. What track? I'm interested.
It's in Atlanta. It's one of the indoor place. It's in Atlanta. I can't remember what is the place called. It's just an indoor go-kart track.
Okay.
So anyway, so the reason that I asked this question is, wait, is it Atlanta or is it in Dallas? I think it's Dallas Fort Worth, in Texas. Dallas Fort Worth. But the reason is it's a brand new place I have never been to. It's a indoor go-kart place. I guess it's because it's real world. I don't know what the difference is. It's much easier for me to know. Oh, hey, this is a place, a corner. Like some of the corner is really tight. Some of the corner is like a much bigger corner. I can basically just leave my throttle a little bit without braking. I was like, I have a much better sense of speed of how to do this. And of course, our last conversation, the spin control as well. But like we
Yeah.
talked about, is the G force and the things. Um, I was like, why I don't see that in this, especially the sense of speed. I'm
I
not talking about like dramatic difference, like we use the example. I spin, and then of course when we come to the next corner, I'm half a speed. I was talking about like the speed around 10-20% differences.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
know the last corner I did really well, so I know I'm probably faster. But let's say if I have an extremely short-term memory loss, like I forgot what happened in the past 3 seconds,
Yeah.
like just
Yeah. Yeah.
looking at the screen, I feel like I can't, if I don't look at the speed from the corner of my screen, I don't know. I'm like 20 miles faster. And it's
Yeah.
hard for me to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that is perfectly fair. So
Yeah.
what we have to figure out is how to articulate and how to really figure out how to adjust what you then do, because I really like that example where you say, imagine you have short-term memory loss, imagine you don't know what the context is, and you're
Yeah.
just you're just doing a certain speed on the approach to a corner. How do you
Yeah.
figure out exactly where to brake? I think the answer is you don't know exactly where to brake. I think every braking point is contextual based on previous experience, which is why you get faster and faster and more accurate when you do more and more laps. Like, okay, and that is diminishing returns. Eventually, you get to a point where you're approximately right every time. But I don't think any good driver nails a breaking point without having tried it at a different point first. I think you adjust and you tweak and you fine tune lap after lap based on how the vehicle responded on the previous lap. Now, I know what you're saying about the karting. You find it easier to just judge that,
Yeah.
and that's true. I think because you can see more clearly and you've got more realistic peripheral vision and sense of speed. Yeah, you've got a sense of speed because you're not just dealing with three screens or whatever and objects kind of going past you. They literally are going past you, and you've got clear peripheral vision plus all the other sensations that give you a very accurate sense of how fast you're going. Yeah, you might not be able to say I'm doing 52 miles per hour, but you've got a good feel for the relative speed you're going, based on compared to the size of the track and the corner that's coming up, etc.
Right.
iRacing is harder because you're going faster. The physics of this are that you are traveling quicker, even though you're not moving at all. Obviously, the virtual car is traveling faster. There's more inertia, and the detail, as good as the graphics are, isn't perfect. We're not seeing 3D depth, and I think VR does help a lot with this. If you've got VR with wide field of
I
view,
do, yeah.
that
I do have a
definitely,
VR. I can try using VR. And back like to exactly back to what you mentioned. The idea what I was saying is, for example, in the real world in the go-kart, even I forget about the last corner I did really well. I can tell in this same spot in this part of track I'm faster than my last lap, for example.
yes,
Right. But in iRacing, like you said, I have to know the context. I have to know that, oh, last corner, I put on gas, get out of the corner much earlier than the previous lap. So right now in the next braking point, I am faster. I know that because I don't have short-term memory loss yet.
yeah,
Um, but
yeah,
but yeah, I will compare the real world. I was like, I don't need to do this. I can sense the speed is faster. And I know I'm pretty sure you are not looking at the number on the speed on the corner of the screen. Do you have like either it's a sound or the vibration or where to look? I think that's probably the biggest part of iRacing is where to look. Give you
yeah.
the sense that, hey, I am faster than my last lap without looking at the speed.
Yeah, so you're right. So I don't look at the speed. Obviously, I'm not looking and seeing, okay, I'm 3 miles per hour faster, so I need to brake a
Right.
meter earlier. It isn't that, but I'm also not exercising perfect judgment every time without the rest of the context. I am still heavily relying on the context of the other information in the previous corners and the previous laps. Like those things, I think if I had short-term memory loss, like in your example there, I would be really poor at judging braking points each time. Even if I could keep it on the track, it wouldn't be accurate in terms of like fast, because I think you need to know that other stuff and build that into your break point calculation. In terms of where to look, I can definitely help you with that, and that is important. That's an important component, and I think we went over this last time potentially.
Yeah.
But let's just do a recap. I mean, I still don't know this track very well, but I'll try and point out where I'm looking on a lap here. I'll turn the volume up. So, I need my cursor. So I'm like looking over here the whole time. I'm just like looking here, looking somewhere into the distance. I'm just literally putting the cursor where my real eyes are looking right now, based on where this is. Sorry if I can't keep the cursor up quickly enough. I'm just like trying to look around the next corner. I'm like searching now. I can't really see. It's like over here somewhere. So basically it's just up. The main point is that the vision is lifted and it's looking to where we think we want to go, but even if we don't quite know it, we're still trying to use a point somewhere in the distance. Here, I was like, where do I look? I don't know where to go. I'm swerving over here. And then the moment I can see, bam, it's over here. So my eyes are kind of looking in the region that I know they're roughly going to be looking in when I can see the apex, but they're waiting to see it. They're like primed and ready to see. So this is definitely part of it. And I'm using that focus point, which is changing quite quickly. It's changing quite rapidly, but you are generally like looking in a better way than I can do with my mouse. Obviously, your eyes are actually focused on a point rather than my wobbly hand. But that is definitely one of the triangulation points that my driving brain's using. It's still got the peripheral vision with stuff going past, but I'm trying to zone in on that point where I'm focusing. So that's the thing that I'm seeing come towards me or not come towards me, depending on what's happening. And that's what I'm kind of basing the speed on. But the actual point I brake and how hard I brake is still definitely based on what I got away with last time. If I easily stopped, say for this next corner we're coming up to now, I think this actually happened, yeah. I easily got it stopped in time. Look, I braked a bit early. I had a massive braking zone. So on the next lap, I will have gone, last time I stopped too soon. This time, resist my natural urge to brake a bit early, even though I can't see it. Go a little bit later, see what happens. The worst that's going to happen is I'll go a bit deep. As long as I haven't been reckless, as long as I haven't gone, I'm just not going to brake until the last possible moment. I didn't do that. I would have gone, I can brake a little later than it feels like I can brake. And then, based on what happens that time, I'll tweak on the next lap. And then fine-tune and whittle down until it's the really accurate version. So I think part of the answer here is there isn't an easy way, at least on a sim, to just feel the speed perfectly without that extra context. And in a go-kart, like as you mentioned, you could pretty much plonk me down into any point on the straight and go, right, go, choose the right braking point. And it would probably be more accurate than it would be on iRacing. But I would still then use the context of what happened on that lap to refine it on the next lap. I think it's just harder on the sim to get that right.
Right. And I'm trying to get, like I keep mentioning, I'm lazy, right? I'm trying to get help points to help myself to make, I do fully agree it is harder. But back into what we talked about for the go-kart, like you said, you still need to know. And the key point I was thinking is, actually for that it is even less about where to brake. For that is that if you plot me in the middle of the long straight, right, in the middle, as I'm going, right, just teleport me there.
Yeah.
I can tell between two laps which one I'm faster right away, even without thinking about braking point.
Yeah.
I can say, this lap is faster versus the other lap in the same spot on the track. But if you plot me in iRacing in the middle of the long straight for like a second, just by looking at the screen going past, I can't tell which one is faster, or it's very hard to tell which one is faster.
Yes. I think all I can say to that is I agree with you. I think that's just a limitation of the sim. Something that just occurred to me as well, Jing, when it comes to comparing like rental go-karting or like Formula Ford at a Grand Prix style track like this, I think you just do a lot less braking in a kart as well. So it's easier to get it right because you're not actually doing as much. A lot more of the deceleration in a kart is done with by just turning and like the grip of the kart than it is on the sim, like in a race car. I think in a race car like this, you have to slow down a lot more using the brake pedal. The braking zones are much longer, even on a really fast kart track. I just did a big race last weekend, and I'm thinking back to then. I'm braking like for a tiny amount of time, and then off the brakes and just turning in because the kart has enough grip to carry that speed or slow you down sufficiently with its grip rather than with having to get all the speed off and then turn in. That's not the case so much in a car or on the sim in a car. So I think one of the other reasons it's harder to get this right on here is it is just simply a much bigger component of the overall lap is being on the brakes and judging the braking point and the pressure. In a kart, like, there's a very, very small window of exactly how much pressure to apply, and you kind of want it to almost lock up with the rears and then straight off. It's just a slightly different thing. So I think maybe part of this solution, or part of the answer to your question, basically, which is what we're trying to answer here, how do you figure this out the best, is there isn't a way which is quite as easy and equivalent as when you're doing a go-kart drive in real life. It might be that if I plonked you in this race car in real life, you'd find some of the same trickiness that we're finding on the sim. Because it is harder than a car. You are braking for long. You are going faster. There is a lot more weight and inertia on the approach to a corner. But there are still other things. There's a couple of things that one really easy thing that I've noticed just watching your replays back here that can help you in the learning phase where you are beginning to fine tune. Because there's a thing that if I take my very first lap, like before I knew the track, I had no idea where the braking point for this first corner was, but I knew it was a left-hander. So I made sure I was all the way over at the right-hand side, on the white line, even more than the white line, to give myself the best possible chance that whatever speed I chose to go into this corner, wherever I braked, I would have the maximum chance of it making the corner. I'm even though I had no idea, I've never driven through this corner before. Okay, I didn't make the apex again, but I would have had less of a chance of making the apex if I tightened the corner up. And that's just, I didn't think about that. That was just an automatic response to, I know, okay, some of the corners I didn't know which way they went, but this one I knew it was a left-hander. I could see it was a left-hander, so I positioned maximally far to the right. And on the equivalent lap that you did here, Jing, I think you're going to see that you might not have done that, that you were giving away free space. Now, it wasn't the end of the world. It's a practice lap. You're not on a qualifying lap. You're learning everything. But these little things will add up and make it easier and quicker to get to that ideal point, even though both of us were in the position here of not actually knowing how tight the corner was, exactly what speed we should do, all that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like, Brad, for example, if you click on one of your lap or my lap when we start a new lap, right? Or click on the laps like you did earlier, like the exact spot when you start a new lap. This is the beginning. For example, here right now, before we move, like this is like in the middle of a long straight, basically.
Yeah.
Right. So when you were in the car, is your eye in a way look at the peripheral, like how fast we were moving, or your eyes keep at this moment to try to search where the apex is? Like,
right now I'm looking. Right now I'm looking for the apex. 100%, I'm looking for the apex. The peripheral vision is like running in the background. It's like a background program that's just always aware without focusing on being aware. It's just I'm just seeing. Like this is just happening, and it's just it's information basically.
So you never consciously pay attention to like, hey, I have to look. Of course, when you look around, it's not peripheral anymore, right? But basically, you never look at the side of the road or anything.
Only if, like with that hairpin at the end of the really long straight. I've got no other visual cue of how far I am from the corner, and so I need to find, like, the number is helpful. I mean, that's why they're there, really, isn't it? The 200, 150, 100.
It's a blind corner. You have to. You
And
can't see the apex. You have to get something, right?
yeah, and you know they're not going to move. I mean, they're here as well. And if I was
Yeah.
struggling, even though I can see this apex, if I was like struggling to be accurate with this, I might consider like glancing across, just like reading what number I'm going past. So like, okay, 150. If I read 150, I don't need to read the next one. I know when it goes past in my peripheral, that's 100.
Yeah.
So I might consider looking at that just as like just to try and help if I was struggling to fine tune it. But
I
I'm
see.
certainly not looking at them. I'm even then, even knowing that I'm at 100, I'm still looking here and boom, like hitting the brakes with that information in mind. And then if I go deep, it's like either, okay, did I brake too late? Did I not brake at the 100? You know, was I just slow reacting? Did I brake too gently at first? Did I brake too hard at first, lock up and then have to back up? Was I slightly too tight to the inside? Or was it exactly right and don't change anything for the next one? You know, there's all these different options that I'm considering
Got it.
when I've made that tweak. But I'm definitely not driving down like looking at the side here. I might look in the distance like there, okay, that one there's 50. So I know the
Yeah.
one just before it's 100, bam. You know, that's the only thing I'm looking at the side. When I'm on a normal lap or once I've got that information of where, you know, what number it is one of these if I'm trying to use them, it's all apex. It's all apex, but still, but not just driving straight to the apex. Obviously, you're still trying to stay tight to the line here with your peripheral vision until it feels like you can kind of see through the corner and that you've got like a natural flow to take. I know it's
That,
so vague. I hate how vague I'm having to be with the way I'm describing this. I'm going to go back to my. Let's go on the
yeah.
better lap here, just so I'm interested to see on my own where I
Yeah.
would have been looking. Yeah, I'm definitely just looking straight at that apex, and I locked
Straight
up.
at.
So next time I know I'd bleed off the brakes a bit earlier. Yeah, and I'm
Mm.
already looking round to the right, looking for this next one because I know it's flat out. Like from my previous lap, I knew all this was full throttle. I know now I've got a long left that I need to then run wide towards the end because it tightens at the end. So I knew when I was looking deep into the apex. I'm now trying to look round the white barrier on the right to see what comes next. So I can't really remember. Okay, I can see it's tightening. So I'm not thinking about making sure I'm all the way out here. I just know that if I'm looking to the right because the apex is over here somewhere on the right, then obviously I want to be as far left as possible to make
Yeah.
that as easy as possible, and that's naturally going to make whatever braking point I choose, it can be later than it could have been.
Yeah.
I think
I
what we're
see.
finding out here is there's a lot of context and there's a lot of extra information
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
being built into it.
Yeah, I think that is the factor. It is the content. But by the way, so for uh, like I do want to make sure I ask that question. Is there any other things that are for the physical setup that you think
Yeah.
is helpful to get a sense of speed? Like I
Yes.
remember a while ago you mentioned the base shaker. I got it. It's really helpful, especially for when I'm losing grip.
Okay.
Um,
Good.
I have triple set up. I adjust the point the field of view to make sure that it's sort of correct in some way. What other things or besides physical setup can help
Yeah.
get a better sense of speed?
So you've already done the main one I was going to suggest. So when we first started this session today, I didn't have my base shaker turned on, and I noticed very quickly because it felt dead. It didn't feel like I was going very fast. I turned on the base shaker, suddenly I could feel more. So that's the first thing. In your wheel settings,
Yeah.
is there a? I haven't been in here in ages, so let's just have a little look. So these are my wheel settings. I haven't changed this in ages, but I'm pretty sure there is a. I was hoping there was some kind of
Like low
vibration,
vibration. Oh, I see. I see.
like increased vibration based on speed. Although I can't see anything in here.
I see.
Yours will be different to mine anyway.
Yeah,
If there's
way
any,
different.
yeah, if there's any
Mm,
setting that increases like road texture feel, that's the one I'm talking
mm,
about. Like because that's the thing which will increase in frequency with higher speed. I think you've done the main things, if I'm honest. Like
mm.
you've got triples. One thing you could do is wind noise on the sound. I normally have it turned down quite a lot, but yeah, look, mine's off. I might even turn that
Oh,
up
I see.
myself a little bit because obviously that's going to get louder the faster you go. Your engine revs will get louder, but your speed is dependent on which gear you're in. So the revs are not necessarily an accurate way of telling how fast you're going. the wind speed for sure, that's going to increase the faster you're going. So that's another added element. I don't think there's much else you can do aside from trying VR. Like a really wide field of view VR would be the ideal.
I see.
That
I
that
remember last time you mentioned something we run out of time, like cover the screen somehow.
Oh yes,
Yeah, yeah. Or
yes.
what is
I
that?
can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't really show you. Maybe I can take a
Yeah.
photo and post it in Discord. I'll
Yeah.
show you what I've done here. Um, yeah, I'm just taking a couple of photos here so you can see what I mean. I've even covered the bottom. I mean, I'm in a pretty bright room where I'm sitting right now, so
Yeah.
it can be. It is easy for a lot of light to get through. I've actually got 4 screens running here because I've got the fourth one above as well. So I would
Yeah.
advise, if you're going to do what I'm about to show you, I'd advise also covering where my 4 screen is. I'm just
So
gonna.
the idea is that cover more non-screen spot. Is that the idea?
Yeah. So here we go. I'm sending you these photos now. So yeah. So you don't have any distraction of the real world outside of the screens. It's weird having these black. I've got black plastic things that fill in the gaps. Having those basically makes me feel more like I'm in this world. I'm in like in the real car, even though there's no screen in those spaces.
Yeah.
I'm also not looking at them. For all intents and purposes, it could be the car's roof. But what I'm not seeing is my window or my ceiling or the wall behind the rig. I'm feeling like I'm in a cocoon here without any kind of distraction of reality
Yeah.
outside.
And, and I guess that's part of the reason, like you mentioned, that the VR may help. Is
Yeah.
that the case? Like,
But you also have the depth. You've also got on the flat screens where we struggled to see
yeah,
that corner coming up at the end of the long straight. We probably
yeah,
wouldn't have struggled in VR if it's a good enough VR headset, with a good enough refresh rate and a clear enough resolution. We would have had like 3D vision. We would have had better
yeah,
triangulation of the shape of and the depth. It's really the depth of how far away things are. I mean, it
mm,
might be for you, Jing, that could be a light switch moment. I'm using my I'm having to artificially fill in the gaps on a flat screen. That
yeah,
when I put a VR headset on, it's like I'm seeing into the world. You can see further away. However, if the resolution sucks, then that goes out the window because
it does.
you
Yeah.
can't see until it's too late. So
Yeah, that's the problem. I try to VR mine, the resolution does suck. And I guess my PCs may not be powerful enough to
yeah,
support
that's the
that.
other thing. That's the other thing.
It's
You
just
need a
so much.
really powerful PC.
Yeah, I spend so much time tinkering, and then in the end, I'm slower, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And that's fair enough. And that's just it is easier to run on screens. That's why I went back to screens. I loved my VR headset, and actually, even though it was a few years ago since I had it, maybe 3-4 years, it was still a really good one. It was a Valve Index I had, and I had a great field of view, and the resolution was good enough. I mean, you can get better ones now, obviously, but you need an even better PC. But it definitely, I always felt like I could judge distances and speed and everything very well. It took a bit of adapting when you got to the real screens. But I do think that feeds into what we were saying with the go-kart, where you are really seeing so much more clarity and real depth that when we're going down to this hairpin at the end of this long straight, we're having to do more mental work on the sim on a flat screen because we lack that absolute perfect information, which is why the context is so important, because you need to remember what happened on the last one and then just use that to build it in and make it more perfect.
right,
But I
right.
appreciate none of this is a golden answer where it's like just do this thing and
Yes,
it will make it easier and fix it. It's actually a much more, like a lot of complex skill sports, it's a more complex answer, which is
yeah,
why experience and moving each of these things we've spoken about into a subconscious part of your driving brain rather than having to try and think about it is so valuable.
yeah. I really appreciate that. Of course, right? Because if it's easy, we won't have a session. We just like message each other and then be done with it.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. But I don't like not being able to provide you with a really clear do this and it will fix it. It's much more of a this is the way I think it works. This is the way I think pro race drivers and sim drivers are operating, even if they've never thought about it. I think they are looking as far in the distance as possible, looking towards an apex, feeling the peripheral objects move past at a set rate. They've got the context of either knowing what's coming next or looking ahead so you can see what's coming next and preparing for the corner appropriately. You know, like with turn one, like we were just looking at, being all the way to the right. There's no
No reason why not, right?
there's no reason why not. Exactly. There's no negotiation. You just, that's where you need to be. So
Right.
so you can just do it and make your life easier. If you have no idea which direction the corner's going next, even then you can look for things to try and give you clues. Like you mentioned the curb at the end of that long back straight. That's a great idea. Like if the curb's on the left, the corner probably goes right. But
Right.
so you can at least attempt to like hedge your bets and be roughly on the right point. And by the time you've done 2 or 3 laps, when you actually know the track, you don't even need to worry about that bit. You just will always approach a corner on exactly the right side of the track and as far across as possible. And then at least that part is settled, and you've got the best possible opportunity from there on.
And Brett, like you drive like in the sim quite a bit. You drive in real world. Like we mentioned that this differences of lack of depth when we look at the triple. That you look at the same spot. Do you think that in a way it does translate? What you practice on a sim even without a VR translate to when you drive in the real world?
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Because the only difference is the thing you're looking for is a bit harder to see on the sim, but you're still looking for the right thing in the same place. The difference is when I go and drive on a real car track, like when I'll do a session maybe with Natalie on Silverstone in a Porsche, and I'll do a bunch of laps, and I'm driving around Silverstone, and it's fine, and I can get around fine, and I'm used to iRacing and Silverstone. When I then go do it for real, it feels the same. It just feels easier. It's like it's everything we just spoke about. It feels the same, except I've got extra information. I'm still looking for the same information, but the information is more forthcoming in reality. I can feel the thing we just spoke about, turning up the track texture vibration so that you feel the frequency of it increase the faster you're going. That just happens. That's really happening. So you feel that. The wind noise is really happening. I can see, provided I've got my contact lenses in, I can see the apex way earlier than I can on the sim. And so all those things are just easier to deal with. The only thing that's more difficult is the danger. But even that's a real thing, and you're feeling danger because of those other aspects, because you are actually going fast and and approaching a corner. But in terms of the driving side, it just becomes easier, and yes, it does translate. 100% it translates.
Got it. I see. So like even basically it's more information, but you are looking at basically the same spot, right? Like different part of you're looking at the same spot of how to get in the corner to get out. To basically at that moment is that you will have extra information about the vibration, the G-force, and the depth.
Yes, yeah, exactly. But all the things that I'm doing, I don't use as far as I can tell, I don't use really a separate part of my brain when I'm doing a real lap than when I'm doing a lap on the sim. Which is why I've tried to make my sim feel as real as possible. I've tried to make the brakes and the steering, everything feel just like I expect it to feel if I'm in an equivalent real car. Because I want to just naturally drive. The only real difference is it's a bit like if I was driving in real life and the screen was fogged up slightly. You can't quite see as much as you want to see. That's really the main difference. But I'm using the same part of my brain, the same subconscious correction mode, the same track mapping. If I go out and learn a new car or kart track that I've never been to before, which is rare nowadays that I find one I've never been to, but sometimes it happens, and I do have a race in maybe a month or a month and a half at a track I've never been to before. I'm doing exactly what my brain did when we learnt this track here today. I'm searching for the information I need, and then on each subsequent lap, trying to remember the bits that went well, trying to remember the bits that didn't go so well, why they didn't go well, I didn't go off again on the second lap in the same place because I remembered, okay, when I get to this vague bit that I can't quite see where I'm going, I know there's a tight right-left coming. I might not nail the brake point on the next lap, but on the next lap I'll get a bit closer. On the next lap I'll be nearly perfect, and on the next lap I'll be really happy that it's just right. All based on what happened last time and what did I do last time? Did it go right? Or did it go well or badly? And based on that, therefore, what do I need to tweak? In which direction? Do I need to brake earlier, later, be wider on the approach, like roll off the brakes earlier? All those things are based on the previous one, and it's exactly how I do it in real life, like identical process.
Got it. That makes sense.
But yeah, the big thing we've found today is it's not an easy answer, which sucks, but it's just not an easy answer. But you're not doing anything. You're not doing anything wrong. Like, you're not deficient. You're not like, you're not doing it the wrong way, and therefore we need to fix it. The only thing that I noticed in this session that I'd say stay on top of yourself is not making your life easy. Creeping away from an edge when you approach the hairpin, just being somewhere near the side, but not all the way at the side, even though you didn't necessarily know how tight the next corner was. Like, things like that, you're in control of those, regardless. Even things like this, we're only 4 laps into this session, but I was finding, okay, I'm not getting track limits by going wide here, so I'm going to just keep using more and more of this green so that I can turn the wheel less and less and less into this corner. Things like that. Just with each lap, make sure the pressure that you're putting on yourself is on the getting the fundamentals right. Like, and if you're not, why didn't I? Was it because I couldn't, because I went in too fast, or I forgot which way the corner went, or whatever it was? Or was it just that I fell into being like slightly lazy in the driving, not staying on top of it? Because eventually, it wouldn't be a case of you needing to not be lazy or not stay on top of yourself. You just do it automatically. There's no effort involved at all. Like, I didn't think about going out wide here. There's zero conscious thought. You just did it because obviously it's a tight left-hander, so obviously I'm going to go all the way to the right. But that is a case of just staying on top of yourself and noticing if you do that.
That makes sense. So to summarize, there are a few things that I will do, right? First is that the basics, like we just talked about here, be on the outside of the lap to the basic. The second part is still where to look, like similar to what we talked about before, looking at the apex, when we going in, where to look. And then the third one is context, basically play an even bigger role in iRacing, in sim basically, compared to real world. Context really helps. I do need to rely on my own context on how did I do for the previous corner. Did I mess up, or I feel like I'm doing really well.
Previous corner and the previous lap, like previous corner and the same part on the previous lap. And then also almost be like planning ahead of, 1 lap ahead. Okay, this thing happened, therefore next time when I get here, I'm going to do X. Right, onto the next corner. And then just before you get to that corner on the following lap, okay, I remember what happened last time and I said I was going to do this other thing differently. Right, now let's go do it. So it has to happen in quite short succession, and it is a lot to remember. And if I was comparing it to like a computer, I'd say you need quite a lot of driving RAM. You need to be able to keep quite a lot of things running in the background, like processes going all the time, whilst also focusing on the current thing that's happening right now. But that's the only way to do it at like a pro level, like the best possible way. I just watched a few of your laps, for example, and every one of the laps we were not using all the track into the first lap, fair enough, we didn't necessarily know, still could have done it, but you didn't know. And then we go on to the next lap, same thing again, and then the fourth lap, as we know, same thing again. So we can tell for a fact you weren't learning from that, for sure.
I need to build that into my burning that into my brain. But like you said, the third thing is, the context is not only just like I mentioned, the context of previous corner, like you said, the context from the last lap, right? It's a combination of those, which is how I'm doing with this corner and the previous lap, so I sort of know what the speed I am. And
the context of your previous experience of this track or similar corners, or I know that's lower down the order of importance, because how it was now or on the previous lap is obviously current and very important. But you're not going into any session totally devoid of context. You know, oh, this is a single-seater with wings and slick tyres, and I'm on lap 3, so the tyres are warm, and normally that means they've got X amount of grip. You know, you've got quite a lot of baseline information, even if it's a brand new track, and most of the time it's not a brand new track. So it's but you've got all this context, and I keep saying the word context, but all of it like built up, which culminates in what just happened, and then the next one down is and what happened on the previous lap, and then the next one down is what happened on the previous run at the in similar conditions. So all those things, just make sure that they're being factored into your decision making. So eventually you don't actually have to consciously factor any of it in. It's just there as like subconscious info. Sorry, you were going to say the last thing, and I interrupted you.
No. That's exactly I want to just think through, the stuff we talked about. And the context, I think, is a big part, right? Like you said, the whole thing, and the last track and the previous corners, and
plus in real time, plus everything we spoke about earlier, like the real time peripheral video right now in this moment. It feels like I'm going this fast. I'm looking at the apex. It's coming at me at a certain rate. Like that's obviously all very, very important too. It's just not in isolation.
Right. It definitely helps, right? Definitely helps. And the last thing, I think related to peripheral vision, the last thing is basically I can change some of my settings here to give me more information about speed, like the vibration and wind noise.
Yeah, you've already got the butt kicker or the base shaker, so that's good.
Right.
If there's any settings in your what base shaker do you have? Is it a butt kicker or is it a different one?
It's a different one. Whatever the simple one, I just bought the DIY version online.
Okay.
So it's just I can't remember what the name. I just Google it. So there's apparently a lot of people get this. It's a cheap bass shaker with a USB amplifier with a sound card in it.
Okay, no problem. The only reason I was saying is on the butt kicker version on the software, it breaks it down into different things like track vibration, etc. So I wonder
I use
whether
a built-in.
that is...
Yeah, I use the built-in one from the Iris.
Here we go.
Basically.
Here we go. Look, LFE. But even if you're not using a butt kicker, if you've got your own
I
one,
use this. Yeah,
so
I use this one.
So road texture, you can turn that up and make it feel more, like it's vibrating more at higher speed. All that stuff. So that's definitely good to make sure you're maximizing that too. But I think you've done all the right stuff to put yourself in the best position to get on top of this. And obviously the final component is just experience, just doing it more. It's, and I know I know that's a long process.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you, Brad.
That's all right. No, as always, Jing, I love the depth of our sessions, and hopefully this is useful to other people too. So I'm going to stop the recording.